Hello, this is Tony. I have good connection.
Coming in loud and clear, Tony.
Thank you.
Zach, this is Dagan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dagan.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Time is now 9:30 a.m. Today's date is March 3rd, 2022. It's the time and place for our regularly scheduled business meeting. Would the other commissioners please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the United States of
of the
America,
United States of America,
Republic
to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God.
liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, commissioners. I would note for the record that Commissioners Fielder, Johnson, Nochi, and myself are present in the Bollinger Room, and Commissioner O'Donnell is participating via Zoom. So we do have quorum this morning. This would be the time and place for our public comment. I do believe we have some public commenters in the room this morning. If so, please step forward to the microphone and announce yourself. Don't be shy. Please state. Press the button and then state and spell your name for the record, if you would.
Good morning, commissioners. Appreciate your time and effort. My name's Dave Duffy. I'm the ex-general manager for Tri-County Disposal here in Helena, Montana. My comments are concerning the permit application by L&L Site Services in the Missoula area. I've been retired for a couple of years, but I have a 12-year experience with Tri-County Disposal and what the permits involved in the state of Montana, how a lot of them were acquired, and what they cost, and the fact that they're worth fighting for and keeping. And that's what I'd like to comment on. So I appreciate your time and effort for being here, and I appreciate you listening to me. First off, I know that I've followed this hearing, and I've also testified at other hearings over permits down in the Bozeman area. And again, it's not that I'm against permits. I think that they're necessary, but I don't think they should ever be free and handed out. Everybody that only has a permit in the state of Montana has either granted it 50, 60 years ago, like the owner of Tri-County Disposal, but the majority of them have been purchased through purchasing a company that had a permit. And I don't have a dog in this fight, but I know that Republic Services, Waste Connections, Montana Waste, all paid dearly for the permits that they hold. And when you look at the record of permits that is in the state of Montana that we had records of, a lot of companies had 15, 20 permits, but they paid for every one of them. And from my perspective as a manager, these permits shouldn't just be given out for any reason. I don't think that rates should have anything to do with it, because nobody in this room knows how much each and every one of these companies, whether it was Waste Connection, Montana Waste, you don't know what they paid to buy them companies and get that permit that went with it. But they paid for it. They didn't get it for free just because they thought the rates were too high somewhere, or there were complaints that somebody brought to the PSC and said, these guys aren't doing their job. There's got to be more to it than that. Tri-County alone, our biggest competitor was the city and the county, city of Helena, Lewis and Clark County. And at one point in my tenure with Tri-County, the city of Helena tried leasing a permit that was available here in the Helena area. And it took a lot of effort for us to get that stopped. They wanted to lease the permits so they could go outside the city limits and compete with us for schools and commercial accounts. And when we finally got that stopped, we purchased that permit from the permit holder for over 6 figures. And I walked into this office and had that permit dissolved and got rid of it. So that's how much it was worth to just our small company here in Helena to get that permit out of our hair, that somebody else could walk up and purchase it and start competing with us. So my big argument in this whole case is that nothing should be free to somebody like L&L Site Services, because these permits they've all been acquired through somebody paying for it. Just recently, in the last couple of years, Montana Waste sold in Great Falls, and 2 companies bid on that: Republic Service and Waste Connections. Where was L&L Site Service in that bidding process? Are they willing to buy a company to get a permit? No, they just rather you guys give them one. And I totally disagree with that. Because everybody in this state, except for somebody, I'll agree that Tri-County Disposal has had their permit forever. They've never sold it. Nobody's bought them out. I don't know how much they may have paid for it when it was new, but it's over 50 years old. But every other permit since then has been purchased by somebody. And they're purchased for, quite a bit of money. I'd say from my knowledge in the garbage industry, the solid waste industry, a permit in Missoula County is probably worth between 10 and 15, 5 and 10 million if you had people bidding on it. If you had Montana Waste or Public Service and Waste Management bidding on a permit to service people in the Missoula area, it's worth millions of dollars. And so I totally disagree with handing somebody a permit because they come to you saying that the rates are too high or there's complaints in the area. There's got to be a better way to come up with a reason for issuing a permit to in a certain area of Montana. Let's see here. Again, nobody in this room knows what some of these companies have paid for these permits. And when you look through that list of permits, I think in the Missoula area, there's 15 or 20 small permits that company has acquired over there and they've paid for every one of them. Okay. And if you look in the Great Falls area, same thing. Although Montana Waste, through years and years of acquiring small companies, had to pay for every one of them. And, if any, I don't have an answer to what you guys were willing to be responsible for, but, if there was a permit, it should be put out for bid. If there, it shouldn't just be handed to somebody that brought the case to you that they want one. I mean, as the general manager of Tri-County Disposal, the owners told me when I went to work for them that you make sure that we do nothing that would infringe on us keeping and holding this permit. And I stuck to that every day. I mean, if we had a customer call us 30 miles out of it, we went out and took care of them. And to make sure that there were not complaints with what we did. The only other thing that I have against really putting more and more permits in areas is the number of trucks that go down the same alley, the same street, the wear and tear, and the emissions that come with having, my whole background is in the dairy industry. Okay. More than the 12 years I spent at Tri-County's Disposal, I spent over 30 years in management in the dairy industry. Started with Ed McHugh here in town in 71. And I left the state for 7 years and went to Twin Falls, Idaho. And I purchased a house that was right outside the city limits, but down a small road that it dead ended at a gate that went out to Evel Knievel's Jump over the Snake River. Okay. And 3 different trucking companies that hauled garbage came down that little county road. And I've been back there in the last year working at the same dairy plant in Jerome, Idaho. And like everywhere else, finally somebody got some money behind them and bought out 2 of those companies. And now only 1 truck is driving down that road. But while I was there, there were 3 different companies. You could tell by looking at their equipment that none of them could afford, none of them were making any money. They were all basically going broke because there was too much competition. So There's, some of that's good and some of that's bad. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I see there's some other folks that came into the room. Did you want to make public comment this morning? Okay. We do have a commenter online. Yes, go ahead. Michelle? Yes. Hi, Michelle.
Hello, how are you, commissioners?
Great. Go ahead and state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Michelle McLendon, MICHELLE MCLINDEN.
Okay, go ahead and make your remarks.
Okay, so since we last met regarding L&L, I have tried diligently to resolve my issues with Republic. I have not been successful. I have agreed to increased services, even though they have not completed those services fully. I've sent multiple requests for proof of overages with no responses. I have filed a formal complaint with the commission only to be told I need to first file an informal complaint, which I have done. I have requested proof of overages for December's billing, as well as January's billing, soon to be February's billing, and have yet to receive one photo of overages. I have sent countless emails asking why services were not completed, only to be told due to snow and ice. I have statements from 2 different witnesses moving, I actually have video of them moving dumpsters with ease in and out of the enclosures on the days Republic's drivers have reported snow and ice to be the deterrent. I have sent multiple inquiries over regarding overages and services and have not received answers in months. I believe their drivers are now targeting our location due to our testimony that we provided to the commission. They are taking retaliatory action and they do not care to resolve any of my issues, even though we continue to overpay for their services. This has proven that my belief that they are a monopoly and that they actively exercise market power and monopoly power is a true and accurate statement. They do not have to assist me, and they have shown that they will not. They will only inform me that I need to increase services, subsequently increasing our expenses. They continue to do so, and because there is no competition, and they control the market. They control the market, and they will continue until L&L is approved to provide services. Their systems are archaic, and they will not improve upon them as they control the market. There's no need for them to upgrade their systems. There's no need for them to have quality control because they are the only provider in the city. Their drivers are inadequate and they will not improve upon staffing issues as they control the market. They are in control and the rest of us are at their mercy. Please allow L&L Site Services to service Missoula and surrounding areas. This is what your people want and this is what we need. We have had it with this monopoly and what the services that they're providing, even to our company on multiple different properties compared to L&L, who services our properties in Bozeman, are inadequate and they're awful compared to what L&L does provide us in a similar situation in a different city. So I am asking you today to please allow L&L to service Missoula and the surrounding areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McClendon. I remind my colleagues that Ms. McClendon did testify during the evidentiary portion of this matter, and to the extent that you rely on her testimony, I'd encourage you to only rely on that was given during the evidentiary portion of this matter. Additional commenters?
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification, that would also apply to all the public comment we've heard today is not part of the evidentiary record. We can't really base our decision on that. Is that correct?
That is correct. Additional commenters? Okay, seeing none, thank you for the public comment this morning. We'll move to changes to the agenda. There is one. We are going to change up the order in our work session to move the L&L site services matter to the first work session item this morning. All right. Action item number 1 is approval of the commission minutes for the week of February 22nd, 2022. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes of February 21st, 2022, the week of February 21st, 2022.
Thank you, Commissioner Fielder. Is there a second? Commissioner Pinocci is seconded.
Second.
Changes to the minutes? Comments to the minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner Fielder's motion to approve the minutes for the week of February 22nd, 2022, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Minutes are adopted unanimously. Let's move to work session item number 1, which will be work session item number 3, which is docket 2020.12.121 L&L Site Services LLC. We're here to discuss and rule on L&L's application for a Class D license for Missoula County to make a final decision on L&L's application. Mr. Regala.
Good morning, President. Commissioners, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I believe Lucas Hamilton is co-counsel with me on this docket this morning. We provided commissioners with a comprehensive staff memo, which detailed the party positions from L&L and Republic. And we tried to place those positions in context of prior commission decisions to inform a commission decision on this matter. We think the parties were well represented and their arguments were comprehensively put forward in their proposed orders and in the oral argument that the commission heard on this matter in early February. Given that comprehensive staff memo and party briefing, we will stand for any questions on a commission's final decision on L&L's application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regala. Mr. Hamilton, do you want to weigh in? All right, he waves off. Is there a motion, Commissioner Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the commission approve L&L's application for a Class D license for Missoula County.
All right, is there a
Mr.
second?
President, like to second.
All right, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Second.
Commissioner O'Donnell has seconded, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that one part of the testimony on the record that was very important to me, it's very significant, is that I think that the evidence indicates monopoly pricing by Republic, which supports the need for another carrier in Missoula County. L&L provided invoices from half a dozen customers who had significant quarterly bill increases, which Republic could not adequately explain. In addition, testimony from former Republic employees who testified that Republic is possibly overcharging for 3-yard containers when the containers are actually 2.7 yards. And then the overage problems that shipper witnesses testified indicates there is a big need for better pricing in or service in Missoula County. Allowing L&L to operate in Missoula County might help solve that problem. I also think that the Magellan survey strongly supports the finding of need. As the survey noted, half of the Missoula County survey participants were dissatisfied with the price they pay Republic for garbage service. These rates show that, quote, Missoula residents pay one of the highest base rates for Class D service in state, unquote. Further, a full 19% are dissatisfied with Republic's customer service, and another 19% requested services that Republic did not provide. 70% are dissatisfied with the overall quality of Republic's services. I it seems to me also that the statute, while listing the first four criteria, that could be interpreted as a bright line standard, possibly, although it's hard to define what customer need is, short of everybody standing around with pitchforks complaining. But I think that what the survey discovered, the level of dissatisfaction and the testimony that we had indicate that there is significant dissatisfaction. But the wisdom of the legislature to allow us to consider competition right there places a certain amount of subjectivity, not overwhelming, but when the term consider means that what we are convinced of. And I, for one, am convinced that the members of the public in Missoula County will be well served by having a competitive hauler there. And so therefore, I support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Additional discussion, Vice Chair Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Question for Mr. Rogala. Mr. Rogala, I'm going to take a couple of seconds here and tell you what I think, and then I'm going to ask you to respond to those thoughts, if I might. First, I think it's important to restate something I've said many times here, and that is, as regulatory commissioners, our job is not to make policy, but to apply existing policy. And that the question before us today as a commission is not whether or not we like the free market system or think competition is a good thing. I'm a fierce supporter of the free market system, and I think competition is, in fact, a very good thing. But the question before this commission today is whether or not the applicant's application meets the specific criteria set out in statute that are requisite for us to grant their entry into this market. I have engaged in rather lengthy conversation with legal staff and spent a substantial amount of time reviewing the record of evidence that is before us today. And I would make the following observations. First, I have to say that I think the 2019 decision by this commission in the similar docket was a right and defensible decision. When I look at what we based that decision on in 2019, and then look at the detailed evidence brought before this commission by the applicant in this new application, it is my view, after consultation with legal staff, that they failed to submit the requisite level of detailed evidence to demonstrate their fitness to operate within Missoula County, and failed to submit the requisite detailed evidence that justifies need for another carrier. Based on those two conclusions, Mr. O'Galla, I certainly have no choice but to oppose the motion to grant entry into the market. And again, it has nothing to do with my views on free market or competition, but rather with that pesky dang thing called the law. And Mr. Rogala, would welcome your response to those observations from a legal perspective.
President Brown, Vice President Johnson, thankfully we've got some helpful language from the Montana Supreme Court on how we interpret the statutory obligation to consider competition when evaluating whether to approve a Class D application or not. The last time we went up to the Montana Supreme Court on a final Class D decision, the McGree Corp case. You remember that was the L&L's application for a license in Gallatin County, which the Montana Supreme Court affirmed. The court gave us some helpful language. They noted that the commission can consider the effects of competition when examining all 4 steps of the PCNN test. However, the commission, quote, cannot rely on the benefits of competition in the abstract to justify granting an application, end quote. Instead, quote, there must be sufficient evidence in the record based on specific facts, close quote. So the whole point there is that you've got to add meat to your arguments of how competition has a demonstrable impact to the commission's 4-part test to deny or approve L&L's application. And it's up to commissioners to really, add that meat and weigh the evidence that's presented before them in making a decision. And so with that kind of as, our baseline, I think that the record evidence submitted in the 2019 L&L application is quite similar to the evidence submitted in L&L's current 2021 application. I think the similar conclusions regarding public need and fitness could reasonably be reached here as well, especially if we look at 2019 as a benchmark. But that's kind of general statements, but happy to respond to more specific questions as well, Vice Chairman or Vice President.
Follow up, Mr. Vice President.
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
If I may, Commissioner Field, a question for you, Mr. Regal. Based on your response there, Mr. Regal, I'm trying to determine what, if any, weight our decision today is based on the 2019 proceeding, Mr. Gala, because it's my understanding this is a new application and a new hearing. Would you like to respond to that, Mr. Gala?
President Brown, the current decision is, of course, based on only the evidentiary record presented in this case and that we received in October. There is some language in the Commission's 2019 order that appears to place some requirements on L&L's application in 2021. Republic noted that this language is binding on the Commission for its current decision, and that L&L failed to meet its burden regarding this language. And from staff's perspective, we disagree with Republic on this point. We think that the Commission's language in Order 7594D, and we're looking at paragraph 105, where we noted that the Commission, quote, puts all future applicants and protestants in Class D PCNN applications concerning large and complex service areas on notice that both parties will be expected to provide operational and market analysis to support their arguments. This requirement does not eliminate the ability to present shipper witness testimony, nor is this supplemental evidence required. Rather, operational and market analysis will merely supplement the Commission's traditional PCNN analyses, end quote. We think this language is dicta. It is instructive of future applicants to respond to, but it is not a requirement. It is not a rule of general applicability that we adopted in a contested case proceeding, because obviously that type of legal authority would be found invalid. But even if we move beyond that question of law, if we look to the actual evidence presented by the parties here, I believe that there's a good faith argument that L&L attempted to satisfy that requirement to the extent it's a requirement. They put forth the Magellan survey, which is an operational and market analyses. They put forth an expert witness who provided market analyses. They had pricing information, which points towards operational and market analyses. So I think that to the extent that 2019 order is relevant to the commission, I think it serves kind of two important functions. One, what was the benchmark for 2019? And did L&L meet that benchmark here? And then two, are there any legal requirements from the 2019 order that bind or control a commission decision here? And answering the first question, that's a commission decision to weigh the evidence. And then answering the second question, I think the answer is no. There are no binding dictates from the 2019 order which control a commission decision in this application. So I think that leaves the commission with broad discretion to weigh the evidence and reach a decision that they believe aligns with the commission's PCN test and the various statutory factors. So President Brown, that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I went on there for a bit. So
Thank you, Mr. Vella. Commissioner Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we have before us a very large body of evidence. This matter is obviously of great consequence to the parties involved and also to the constituents in my district. We've had this case with us now for well over a year. And as the presiding officer of the case and the commissioner whose district is directly impacted, I felt it was especially incumbent upon me to be very familiar with all of the evidence submitted, to listen carefully to the testimony, and to develop and provide sufficient basis for my decision and the purpose for my motion today. This is an incredibly important case. It should not be taken lightly. The parties have put substantial effort into it. The commission and our expert staff have put significant resources into it. And it is of particular concern to this commissioner as it falls within my district and affects a significant area of my district. While my colleague has suggested to oppose the motion, I'm compelled by the facts and evidence in this matter to ask my colleagues to support my motion to grant the license. And I ask for your indulgence if I may go through the basis for my decision, Mr. President.
Of course.
Thank you. I was going to cover the dicta question from paragraph 105 of the old order 7594D. I believe Mr. Regala covered it very well. I concur that the paragraph in question that noted that the commission was putting the future applicants and protestants in Class D PCN applications. The commission was putting those applicants and contestants on notice that they were expected to provide operational and market analysis to support their arguments. That same paragraph went on to say that this supplemental evidence is not required of the parties. Rather, it is an element of dicta. It may be informative, it may be instructive, but it's certainly not required. And we cannot base the crux of this case on that argument. The actual standard that we are to follow is the PCN standard, Public Convenience and Necessity Standard, also called the PCN test. And that's what I specifically looked for. Number one, is the applicant fit and able to perform the proposed service? Number two, has the applicant demonstrated that there is a public need for the proposed service? Number three, If there is a public need for the proposed service, can the incumbent carrier meet that need? And number 4, if the incumbent carrier cannot meet that need, will the granting of a new license nonetheless harm an incumbent carrier contrary to the public interest? And so to point 1 of the PCN test, there's no serious question whether L&L is fit to operate as a Class D motor carrier. It is currently hauling demolition debris generated in Missoula County to the Tri-County disposal site in Helena. It has grown its Gallatin business tenfold over the past decade, with profit margins exceeding 20%. L&L's banker testified that L&L could finance expanded operations in Missoula County with existing cash flow from its Gallatin County operations. But if L&L required external financing, the bank would be happy to assist. Further, L&L has successfully recruited 2 of Republic's senior employees in Missoula to manage L&L's Missoula County operations. L&L is already providing recycling and demolition services in the county with 5 trucks and has acquired a 3-acre parcel capable of accommodating a fleet of approximately 100 trucks for an expanded operation into Missoula County. L&L clearly has the ability to provide the services countywide, given their proven track record, astronomic growth, and profitability in its Gallatin County operation. Plus, they have experience in the Missoula market where they currently operate a demolition debris hauling company, and they've invested significantly in the property to support that 100 truck expansion in Missoula County. To point 2 of the PCN test, has the applicant demonstrated that there is a public need for the proposed service? I believe absolutely they have. Based on the evidence in this record, there are 3 primary factors. How concentrated is the market? It is 100% saturated right now with only 1 provider. Number 2, how profitable is Republic? Republic is highly profitable. And number 3, do L&L shipper witnesses indicate a need for better services, additional services, or lower rates? And the answer is absolutely, they did. To point 3 of the PCN test, is there a public need? And can the incumbent carrier meet that need? Witnesses testified that Republic does not serve many of the county's small roads and alleys. Instead, customers have to haul their trash containers to a common pickup point, some distance down the road at times, or push heavy dumpsters out into places where Republic's large trucks can pick up those items. In contrast, L&L uses smaller 4-wheel drive trucks for areas like this so they can meet the needs of currently underserved customers right at their homes like they do in Gallatin County. Republic performs some routes in the middle of the night, which requires customers to put trash containers out the night before. And this can contribute to problematic conflicts with nuisance wildlife attracted by trash and result in unsanitary conditions. In contrast, L&L intentionally starts its routes in the morning, providing their customers with an opportunity to put their trash out on the same day of service instead of leaving it overnight and subjecting it to wildlife mischief. Republic charges excessively high rates to its rural customers, essentially creating a cherry-picking situation whereby they effectively price some rural customers out of the market. In contrast, L&L has testified that it intends to serve every customer in the county, and it will not charge higher rates for rural customers than it does for urban customers. L&L pointed out in their proposed order that their cost-efficient operations allow them to obtain profit margins similar to Republic by charging customers substantially less, even if L&L must continue hauling Missoula County waste to Tri-County disposal. The different cost and revenue structure can result in similar profit margins. The different cost and revenue structure between these 2 companies can result in similar profit margins, and perhaps it will. But with a more efficient operation, L&L has demonstrated an ability to provide more customer-friendly pricing, and that is very much in the public interest. This is a point that L&L expert witness Dr. Cross conveyed during his testimony. And a troubling fact for me was that despite numerous shipper complaints, Republic downplayed them as if they were inconsequential. And those complaints were serious and significant. So therefore, I question whether Republic can meet the need. It certainly hasn't to this point, and it's been operating in the Missoula County for some time. And finally, we come to part 4 of the PCN test, and that is, if the incumbent carrier cannot meet that need, will the granting of a new license nonetheless harm an incumbent carrier contrary to the public interest? Republic's own testimony demonstrates they clearly will not be harmed contrary to the public interest. They are a large, highly profitable organization and fully capable of enduring competition. While granting L&L's license to operate is likely to impact Republic's bottom line in some way, it certainly will not put Republic out of business. It may actually stir them to serve the public better. Colleagues, failure to grant the license is the thing that would be most contrary to the public interest. In closing, the commission has previously concluded that the public convenience and necessity required an additional carrier when the service territory exhibited evidence of the need for more fair pricing, better customer service, additional service, or when important policy grounds are presented. Colleagues, as you know, I personally presided over these proceedings, some 40 hours worth. I listened intently to every moment. While it is not enjoyable at all to rule against an existing and large company within my district or its supporters, I believe it would be a grave disservice to the public and to my constituents to deny L&L's license. The evidence is clear. While Republic would obviously prefer not to have any competition at all in this market and has gone to great lengths to thwart it, there is significant need for more fair pricing, better customer service, and additional services, and L&L is clearly willing, able, and eager to provide it. I certainly cannot in good conscience deny this application, and I certainly hope my colleagues will not either. Respectfully, I ask you to vote yes for my motion and grant this license for L&L to operate in Missoula County. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Fielder. Additional discussion? Commissioner Pinochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Zach, let's take a look at some testimony. As I understand it, the testimony was clear that Cascade County was 270% higher than Missoula in garbage cost. Do you recall that?
Commissioner Pinochi, I'm trying to pull up the exhibit right now with those exact figures, but subject to check. I believe the prices were higher in Missoula County compared to Cascade County. I don't know the exact figure.
In the last hearing, I think it was accidentally stated 2,700% higher, and then they corrected it to 270% higher.
And I'm pulling up that hearing transcript with the testimony currently. But if you proceed with your question, I can keep listening while I'm pulling it up.
Thank you. I'll proceed. The concern that some residents of Cascade County has presented to me is that the structure of how garbage is handled is very different in Cascade County. Cascade County charges the residents of Cascade a fee for the landfill. So all of the residents pay through county taxes for the landfill. Republic just delivers garbage to the landfill. In Missoula County, Republic charges to pick up and deliver garbage plus the landfill. So this is the obvious reason why Cascade County is much cheaper. But in reality, I don't think that's a fair comparison. Was there testimony, and I'm struggling to find this, that explained that, which would have cleared that up? And if not, truly it's unfair to say Missoula is 270% higher than Cascade County. Was there some testimony that shed some light on that fact?
President Brown, Chairman or Commissioner Pinocci, unfortunately, I don't think we have great comparative pricing evidence in the docket. We do have L&L's exhibit, which purports to show that it's more expensive generally in Missoula County compared to other counties. But we did not have, I think, robust discussion from L&L or Republic that actually provided an apples to apples comparison of prices, so where we could conclude either way whether it's that much higher in Missoula or that much lower in Cascade County. We'd like to see better evidence from the parties on this, but I just don't think we can reach that conclusion in this docket.
Follow up, Mr. President.
Follow up.
When L&L was asked for a business plan, was it correct that their answer was, we don't have one?
President Brown, Commissioner Pinocci, generally, yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to respond to that.
Would you defer to Commissioner Fielder to respond?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner Pinocci, the answer from L&L's president was that they're already operating a business successfully, and that business is not going to reinvent itself. They're going to continue to do what they're already doing. They're not creating a new business in Missoula. They're just expanding into Missoula. So in that respect, they're already operating under a business plan. So they did not create a new one for this area because it's not a separate company, was the testimony given.
Commissioner Pinocci, would you like to follow up on that? Mr. Regala, any elucidation?
Yeah, President Brown, Commissioners Pinocci and Fielder, I think there's kind of two ways to look at the business plan question. One is, did we get a 12-page pro forma business plan with detailed route comparisons, pricing information, pro forma cash flow statements, income statements, or balance sheets? And the answer is no, we did not. And that would be what you typically expect of a business looking to expand into a 7 to 8 figure lucrative garbage hauling market. But the other way to look at the business plan issue is, I think, what's familiar to a lot of small businesses in Montana, where you focus your time and energy on improving the product that you deliver and keeping costs down and building a strong reputation and a good name for yourself. And in that respect, I think L&L did what it felt was more than adequate to demonstrate its intention and its strategy and its decision-making processes to expand into Missoula County market. And to the extent that informal strategy resembles a business plan, then I think that might kind of highlight the distinction that Commissioner Fielder and Commissioner Pinocci are getting at here.
Commissioner Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President. If L&L had not been successfully operating and was a brand new startup entity, I think that business plan would have been very instrumental, but because they are already operating successfully and have proven, demonstrated that they know what they're doing, they have satisfied customers, they're providing good quality service, and they're providing it at a good price. I do not feel that the lack of a structured business plan, such as Mr. Regala described, was necessary to demonstrate that they know what they're doing and they have a good viable business.
Additional discussion? Additional discussion? All right, let's move to a vote on this matter. And this one is clearly calls for a roll call vote, I believe.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me still?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you.
Did you have additional comment or are you ready to vote?
I'm ready to vote. Thank you.
Very good. All right, Vice Chair Johnson.
No.
So I'd remind my colleagues that we are voting on Commissioner Fielder's motion to approve the application. As Chair Johnson votes no. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Pinochi.
No.
Commissioner Fielder.
Yes.
And then I vote yes. Motion carries 3-2. The commission will issue an order on this matter forthwith. Thank you for the excellent discussion, and let me commend the parties for their excellent briefing on this matter and excellent presentation during hearing. All right.
Mr. President,
Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
due to the length of the discussion so far and my pressing appointments, I regretfully have to leave the meeting at this time.
You are excused. Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell, for being out in the wilds and still being able to participate. We appreciate it.
Thank
Safe
you.
travels.
Bye.
All right, we'll move to what was work session item number 1, which is docket 2020.09.094, commission initiated commission investigation of North Star to provide an update on the status of North Star water and sewer. Mr. Fink.
Morning, President and Commissioners. Happy to be here this morning. On the line with me is Zach Rogala. This is an update on the North Star adequacy docket for the month of February. Briefly summarize what was submitted there. The important points to note was that Rocky Mountain Operators still plans to have meters installed by the end of May. They're having some supply issues with those coming in. They plan on implementing one restriction throughout the summer through the months of June through September. Odd even watering days for each customer, 8 hours a day, 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon, or PM, I should say. They plan to communicate this information with the customers via email, and they say they have about 200 emails on file. And then they also still plan on putting up signs in front of the entrances for that communication purpose. And one other thing I want to note with this docket is just kind of a progress from where we were at last summer to where we're at now. This docket was opened in September of 2020, and last summer it was North Star's stance that they had implemented a no watering rule. Part of that reason was a usage issue and supply issue with some pumping problems. It's good to note that those pumping problems have now been taken care of, and they do have backup pumps in the backup pumps currently on site if any pump were to fail. They've also done the research to, if there's any pump that goes out and they need to run into town to get it, that those pumps are available. And if you recall last year or a year and a half ago, Rocky Mountain operators were only monitoring the system 3 days a week. Due to this docket, North Star is now having them monitor it 7 days a week, which will help with the efficiency of the water supply and usage and help monitor the system. Most recently, a few months ago, Rocky Mountain operators did a system check of all pumps and did required maintenance. They did provide what I'll call an exhibit, and it provided the expenses with those required maintenance amounted to substantial expenses for the company. And they also were able to fix a lot of pumps or do the required maintenance in preparation of 2022 watering season. That being said, Zach, do you have anything further to add with that?
He shook his head no.
No? Okay. Yeah. Good to know. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fink, a couple of questions for you. First, these discussions now to provide these monthly updates have been going on for some time. Would you give to the commission your sense as to what the attitude of the parties the attitudes are now? Is there a feeling of cooperation and good faith at this point? You know, some of this was quite contentious in earlier phases of this docket and earlier ones. And I ask that question because I think it's important for us to have some feeling of that, the quality of that working relationship as we try to analyze the reports that come to us. So what is that, in your view, that working relationship like at this point?
President Brown, Vice President Johnson, it's my opinion that those relationships are in good working order, and the parties are working collaboratively together. I think Zach was going to touch on a point that you had mentioned about these monthly updates. If you have anything to add, Zach, on that?
I do. Sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Gall.
Yeah, sorry, President Brown, Vice President Johnson. I get the sense that the MCC is taking a step back from active participation in this docket until North Star files its next rate case to adjust its tariffs and change its rates. I get the sense that the Homeowners Association and Mr. A. Stryker, that they've resolved several of the communication problems they've had. You know, most notably, let's talk about the irrigation pasture that was being watered with wastewater. You know, issues like that have been taken off the table and resolved. And now it kind of feels like the issues are now more of like an operational concern. Hey, let's get the pumps in, let's get the meter registers in before the next watering season. And so it's kind of, I think, quieted down quite a bit. And the problem would be, you know, the potential problem is, will these operational issues actually get resolved before the next watering season? And we don't have great insight there, but I think that the parties have made great progress because we've already got a bunch of registers replaced. We've got replacement pumps, and we've got this proposed even odd watering restriction, which everyone in Luzerne County is familiar with because they had to undergo the same thing, you know, the last couple of summers. So I think we're in a good progress or a good place, but it's always one of those things that's hard to know until you get into the watering season. So,
Follow up, Mr. President.
Follow up, Mr. Vice President.
Either of you, is there any sign of significant discontent on the part of the homeowners with regard to the proposal for simply going at the beginning of irrigation season to the twice a day, even odd watering schedule. How has that been received?
President Brown, Vice President Johnson, I have not heard of any commenters from the customers to date. However, this report was filed in the middle of or beginning of February, middle of February. I don't know if Zach has heard anything other than that as well.
Mr. Gala?
President Brown, Vice President Johnson, we haven't heard anything, and I think it might be a good idea to notice this as a potential tariff change that would go into effect for this upcoming watering season, and provide the HOA and the NCC the opportunity to comment on it to see if there's any additional process on this service condition. And if not, then it could be implemented. Because right now they've indicated that they would they intend to implement this. So I don't think it's really gone out broadly to the HOA yet.
One more, Mr. President, if I might follow up. I think, Mr. O'Gala, that's a fine idea. I would suggest, and I don't want to make this a matter of a motion and commission order, but I would, in course of conversation with the parties, suggest that leading up to that ability, that opportunity to comment, that, well, 200 emails out of 275 or whatever is great. It's not 100%. I think in this particular case, it would be worth the effort and the cost for a written description of the proposed policy to be delivered to every water utility customer, that so that they know, and in that description of what's being proposed, specific recommendation as to how those individuals can in fact respond to the proposed policy. So if we can do that simply through conversation as we work towards the next monthly update, I think that would be great, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional discussion or questions? Commissioner Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President and Vice President Johnson, for staying on this issue, and to the staff as well. While the progress being made on that has been made on the pumps is, I think, good, and I appreciate that. Still find that the questions I asked at the very beginning of this have not been answered. Number one, how much water is available? Number two, how much is being used? Number three would be, are restrictions actually necessary? And until we know the math, we don't know. We've just got, and the question that was asked and was submitted in response to it in Mr. Stuck's sworn testimony, question number, well, he has point number 3, and he says, I hereby respond to the following question: what will trigger an odd even watering day restriction? He really didn't answer what will trigger it. He just said, we're going to impose it. And I think they need to be looking at, there's been questions raised about whether they have sufficient water rights, whether they have sufficient capacity to serve the number of homes that they've developed there. And until the quantification is done, there's no way to know that. So I'm still interested in the quantification of how much water is available and how much is being used. And I am disappointed on the progress on the meters. I see that the sworn testimony of Mr. Mills says that they ordered a group of meters in December of this year, of just last year. So several months after we requested that the meter issue be resolved immediately and be done before this watering season. And they ordered another group in January, late January of this year, and still another group in February, just last month. So I know they have replaced some other meters and they've reported their progress on that, but I don't think they've addressed the meter issue timely. And now they're saying that these meters are back ordered, and There's no information here about whether they have attempted other sources for those meters. And I'm just not seeing, I'm not seeing that this company is acting responsibly in terms of the timeline that is coming up with the commencement of the watering season, because now they're saying that these things have been, the dates, delivery dates have been moved several times, and some now are promised in mid-March, some are promised by May 1st, and yet others are promised in mid-May. And by then we are we are into the watering season. So I know that the vice president had asked them to take care of that before the watering season. I think you said a date of March 1st, if my memory serves me correctly, and we're not anywhere near having that completed. So I am pleased with some of the progress, but I'm disappointed with the real key of the problem. The root of the problem is how much water is there? How much is being used? Do they have enough? Are restrictions actually necessary? And those questions haven't been answered.
Mr. Fink, did you want to respond to that at all? I'd be particularly curious about the water rights question, because I seem to recall through the mists of time that we did get an affidavit that attested to the amount of the water right. And as I recall, and please correct me on this, Mr. Fink or Mr. Regal, as I recall, I believe the assertion was that there was adequate capacity to provide water to all the homes. Mr. Fink.
President Brown, Commissioner Fielder, on all very good points there. With regard to the water rights and the usage and amount of water that the wells are pumping and the authorized pumping amounts, there was data provided in the record. I don't know how long ago, but the permit allows for a daily usage of up to 410,000 gallons per day based on a pump rate of 285 gallons per minute. And North Star reported that their wells have produced at rates up to 300 gallons per minute or 432,000 gallons per day previously. I think one of the major drivers or concerns in the past was that there was a distribution pump that was not in service, or it was weak, so it wasn't able to fully operate. And when they got that fixed, it then helped with the production of more water being pumped into the system. But they did provide some numbers, and I think it was a month or two ago that they provided 2021 usage data on the system. And based off of Tyler Stuck and his testimony with Rocky Mountain operators, he did not foresee North Star being short of any water in the 2022 watering season, if I recall correctly from that, from his verbiage.
Mr. Regala, anything to add to that?
President Brown, Commissioner Fielder, I'd have to go back and look at the documents on the water right issue. The only thing I would note is that when Sam and Joel put together their analyses of the existing water right and the consumption based on historical data that they were consuming beyond that right in the watering seasons pretty substantially. And that was because of what North Star indicated or alleged was overconsumption by a couple of properties, a couple of 2-acre properties that were over-consuming quite a bit and didn't have water meters on their property for North Star to confirm that overconsumption. And so we focused on the water meter issue and less on the water right issue. But I'd have to go back and look on the actual water right annual reporting from previous months.
And Commissioner Field, I'd just like to clarify the thrust of my question was not in any way to diminish what you were saying, because you're absolutely right. Until we have the register issue resolved, then we're really working on assumptions as we're discussing now. And so I am certainly with you that it is disappointing that here we are at the 3rd of March and the register issue has not been redressed. Of
And Mr. President, if I may,
course, Commissioner Fielder.
so I understand there was quite a bit of mathematical data presented in the past, and I actually ran through all that. And that's why I came up with the motion to allow people to actually water last year, was because based on the historical numbers that the provider had given to us, they didn't have cause to shut off the watering like they did. And I just want to make sure that, you know, they're not shutting it off when they don't need to. So, and the amount of data that was presented was, you know, some of it was different years. It was based on different pumps, different number of homeowners and things like that. It'd just be nice to know what is the total available and what is the total demand, and do they have a supply issue? And then if they do, you know, how to deal with that. But just telling people they can't water and the kids can't fill up their pool without a good reason just doesn't seem what folks bargain for. I guess the other question, Mr. President, would be, and the Vice Chair and I discussed this a little bit, was 4 hours every other day, or 4 hours twice a day, every other day, probably is enough for people to water their yards and that type of thing. But does that mean that, you know, the kids can't fill up their kiddie pool in the middle of the day, or, you know, the dutiful wife can't wash her husband's truck for him, which some good wives do, you know, in the middle of the day? Or is this plan to go to 4 hours every other day, twice a day? Is that going to allow the company the latitude to not put restrictions on those other types of ancillary uses, you know, that besides the actual irrigation? And if that's their answer, you know, that's pointing to, you know, allowing people to live their lives and making sure they don't run out of water too. And that's great. I hope that that's the goal for everybody, but I hope the goal isn't that we're going to limit water because it's cheaper for us and easier for us and because everyone else is doing it. I'd like to see the real reasoning behind it and make sure that it's valid.
Additional discussion or questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Gallo. Thank you, Mr. Fink. All right, let's move to work session item number 2. This is docket 2021.01.015, Energy West and Cut Bake Gas Company, the joint application for sale and transfer of EWM CBGC to approve EWM CBGC's one-time bill credit. Mr. Gala.
Thank you, President Brown. Final work session for today. You'll remember that we received a settlement agreement from all of the joint parties in this proposed sale and transfer. One of the settlement agreement conditions was a one-time $125,000 bill credit to be refunded to the Energy West and Cut Bake Gas customers. The commission held a listening session on this settlement agreement and then ultimately approved. And in the final order approving the settlement, we directed the parties to provide us with a proposal of how the $125,000 bill credit would be refunded to customers. Energy West and Cut Bank provided a proposal to the Montana Consumer Council. The Montana Consumer Council did not contest or respond to that request from Cut Bank Gas. They then submitted that to us as their proposal. And essentially what they're doing here is they're taking that $125,000 bill credit and they're dividing it by the prorated revenue requirement based on the customer class for each of Energy West and Cut Bank Gas service customer classes. And so out of their, $10.2 million annual revenue requirement split between 8 customer classes, that results in a per customer refund of between $2 for residential customers in Great Falls and $4,000 for Malmstrom Air Force Base. Staff does not have any problems with this proposed bill credit. And the only other thing we'd note is that after the commission's approval of this decision, the remaining jurisdictions where this application was considered were approved, and there were no other conditions that the other utility commissions attached to approval that we felt the commission should adopt, consistent with our order, which provided us that open door to do so. So available for any questions, and Dagan Lynch is here as well. And so we'll end there.
All right, Mr. Lynch, did you want to add anything? Mr. Lynch?
No, Zach did a great job. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it.
Zach did do a good job. All right, Commissioner Panochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt staff recommendations. Everybody loves a credit.
Is there a second? Vice President Johnson is seconded. Discussion? Commissioner Panochi?
Zach, I want to tell you how I really appreciate the fact that larger customers get a fair share of credit. What I was hoping would not happen is they divided it out equally to each customer, and that's not what happened here. So I think this is a great way to handle that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Regal, thank you for your remarks right there. At the end of your remarks, that was going to be my question, that as I understand that this, if we vote to issue the NCA, this wraps up this matter in all conditions that we imposed, correct?
Correct.
Additional discussion? Okay, seeing no additional discussion, all those in favor of Commissioner Panochi's motion to issue the notice of commission action approving the customer credit signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Again, Commissioner, all those opposed, say no. Commissioner O'Donnell's excused. The motion carries 4-0. Okay, that wraps up our work session items this morning. Just a reminder for the public that our next commission business meeting will be Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. Usual time of 9:30 a.m. And seeing no further commission business coming before us, I will adjourn. Time is now 10:49. I will adjourn this meeting.